Welcome back to another episode of the Girl Boss Method podcast, hosted by myself, Richie Bra. Now, on today's episode, we are joined by some of the lovely girls from the Girl Boss Method. So tonight we're going to have a bit of a discussion, and the topic for today is what are some good nutrition swaps for fat loss? So this was a question that was asked in one of the check-ins a couple of weeks back. And so, yeah, this is what we do. We get in and we answer some of those things here live. Okay. So for fat loss, ideally, we are looking at a calorie deficit and maintenance of lean muscle mass, which is going to help us better utilize energy. We need protein to achieve this, and we need fats, of course, to help us with hormonal health. And we need carbs because they also equal energy and they make us happy. So what we're going to go through is actually a few examples of nutrition swaps. Now, before we do that, so one of the most generic things that you might hear of is, when you ask for you Google and you go, what swaps are good, you might hear something like, oh, swap white bread for whole grain and have sweet potato instead of white potato. Now, when we're thinking about creating a calorie deficit, so we're not talking about any micronutrient composition here. We're not talking about fiber or anything like that. Like, obviously, fiber is going to help keep us full. But when we're thinking about the calories, does it actually matter? So if we're thinking about per slice of white bread, you might be looking at less calories, for example, and brown bread or whole grain bread will be a bit more. And again, it's like literally a matter of like 10 or 12 calorie difference. And then with the sweet potato and the white potato thing, again, you've got different micronutrients in there. And I believe that the white potatoes might be slightly higher in calories. Correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but I think that's generally why it's kind of like demonized. There's this whole sort of white versus whole grain argument. And obviously there are benefits to having whole grain foods. But ideally, we shouldn't be demonizing or excluding any of these. And mostly this comes down to dietary preferences. So if you like white potatoes, have them. And if you like sweet potatoes, have them. And same goes for bread as well. It's not going to do you any harm by eating white bread. And similarly, you're not going to start making miraculous overnight changes by getting rid of white bread. Okay. So some of the swaps that we can go for. So we can look at vegetable-based substitutes. So for example, with pastas, we can go for like spiralized courgette or like spaghetti squash as well. Bean and lentil pasta options. They're so readily available now in supermarkets. Like, yes, you've got things like whole wheat pastas and stuff. But there are more and more lentil, like red lentil, green lentil, black bean. Other ones you might get edamame, chickpea as well. So there's so many different types of pastas that we've got access to. And the reason why I'd say substitution for those things is that naturally they're going to be higher in protein and potentially lower in carbohydrates as well. So just by looking at the composition, it's just a better swap, especially if we're trying to increase our protein intake to, again, help preserve that lean muscle tissue and help with satiety as well. Okay, we want to feel satiated. Again, cauliflower rice instead of regular rice. And I know that sounds absolutely disgusting, but I actually did this a couple of weeks ago and I had a double portion of cauliflower rice for my dinner and with my dinner, and it actually just tasted fine. It was fine. I mean, maybe the bite and the chewing was a bit different than regular rice, but it didn't make a massive difference to me. And I'm pretty sure I probably saved myself like 200 calories. Other things that we used to think about is in terms of swaps, like opting for lighter protein choices as well. So grilling your meat or your fish, and then just opting for like egg whites, for example, instead of the whole egg, just to for the calorie intake, just to help that lower calorie intake. And then again, this is a big one, so especially for you vegetarians, you get a lot of bang for your buck here, but opting for reduced fat dairy. So thinking about like the Greek yogurts and stuff like that, and the low fat yogurts, great way of getting in. Again, this can be viewed as bit of a protein food as well, because you get some of them are quite high in protein and then obviously lower in fat. And then just smart snacking. I actually spoke to one of the girls earlier today, or we messaged in the group, and I said, I'm not a massive fan of snacking. And it's not to say that snacking is bad, but I feel like snacking can be such a mindless thing to do. Like snacking generally kind of sits around picking bits of food, eating whilst you're distracted, whether you're watching telly or you're working. And it's all those small little things that sometimes we don't really realize, or we forget how they all account for the bigger picture in terms of what our energy intake ends up being for the day. So again, if you are going to opt for snacking, opt for fresh veggies, low fat portioned hummus as well, instead of like family size bags of crisps, and then opt for air popped popcorn instead of these like buttered or flavored popcorns and things that you get out there. There are some really good ways of getting lower calorie foods in. So again, I know that you know a lot of these things, but sometimes it's just that reminder being told again. And then when it comes to cooking, like with fats and stuff, like I would recommend like a Flora light spray or similar. Or if you are having oils, definitely measure them out. So don't just kind of ballpark, guesstimate, get the bottle and drizzle it into the pan. You honestly have no idea just by eyeballing. It's so difficult to eyeball a tablespoon of oil. Again, especially if that pan is really hot, it's just going to like nothing when it hits the pan. So again, you could do that, or you can opt for baking, steaming, or air frying. So myself, I'm a vegan. That's not a shock to anyone because I do talk about it quite a lot, but I absolutely love tofu, and tofu is one of my main protein sources. So for me, I like to do tofu in the oven. I bake it, and with this one, I coat it in sriracha sauce, and I put something called nutritional yeast over it. And that is just such a nice way to know what my food is, and also not have the extra calories of frying it in oil, for example, in a frying pan. I've never actually steamed tofu, but I'm also a big fan of air frying. Air frying tofu makes it just really crispy. And again, I could just totally eat air fried tofu on its own with a bit of salt and a bit of chili. Absolutely delicious. And then also thinking about portion control here. So be mindful on your portion sizes to avoid overeating, especially when we think about things like rice. It's so easy to kind of get plate and stick rice on it and then stick everything else on it as well. So again, just be mindful of that. You can opt for smaller portions or smaller plates, to sort of help with that that visual feeling of what you're having. So for those of you that are for those of you that are on a fat loss or weight loss journey, one of the things that I've done in the past, especially when it comes to oats, and you'll see bodybuilders do this, is they'll go for a small bowl and they'll go for a very small spoon. And I know it sounds crazy. There's just something maybe like mentally thinking that you're having more because you've got a smaller spoon. But if you get a big spoon, you're likely going to go through that quicker, right? So it can also help slow things down. One thing I didn't actually mention on these slides, which a huge fan of is actually chewing your food. So actually going through mastication. I believe it's something between 32 or 33 times that we should chew each mouthful. And during lockdown a couple of years back, because we were actually talking about 2020 a bit earlier, I tried to do this and I sat down and I had my meal and I chewed every bite for like 32 to 33 minutes. 32 to 33 times. And I'm telling you, it took me about 30 minutes to finish that plate. And I was so full. So slow down your eating. Take your time. And especially when it comes to things like being distracted as well. So if you are working and if you are watching telly and you're eating, you've just got no control on how quick or how, the speed of eating is going. Focus on some volume foods. So you want to think about adding leafy greens, salads, low calorie, non-starchy veggies like broccoli and spinach. And also broth-based soups help as well. So I tend to get these Itsu noodle pots and everything's in the pot. And I usually have that again with my protein source. Some of the girls do this as well. But for example, if you were to actually just go for miso itself, or even like vegetable stock, you're definitely going to help with that volume. You've got more fluid, more water, you've got that soup, you've got the stuff in there, and hopefully that can help fill you up as well. And then again, when it comes to beverages, opt for unsweetened. I guess that means unsugary, perhaps, maybe. Choose water or lower calorie beverages. So yeah, water, diet drinks, herbal teas, black coffees instead of like sugary or high calorie coffee beverages. So again, I'm sort of saying a lot of the stuff that people generally know, and it's just a reminder. And actually, for some of you, you might not actually know this. You might not even consider that when you go to Starbucks or when you go to Costa in the morning, that latte or that mocha or whatever it is that you're ordering, you are downing about 300 to 400 calories in a very short period. Or basically, you're just downing a whole drink of coffee, caffeine, and sugar. So you just want to be mindful of that. And like, again, it does go a long way just by even swapping out sweeteners. So I'm actually on my own sort of shreddy journey, if you like. And I've got a couple of photo shoots coming up later in this year. So the girl boss is as well. So it's going to be really, really fun. But I'm a fan of syrup in my coffee in the morning, and I have like frothy milk, and I've literally just switched that out for a sugar-free version, and the calories are like a third now. So again, such a good little hack. Right, other things. So choosing fruits with high water content. The things like berries are great. Not bananas, if I'm honest. Bananas are actually, they're great, but they're actually quite high in calories, especially if you are, trying to get more bang for your buck. And it's not to say that you can't have a lower calorie diet with bananas in. Again, just being mindful that if you are going to be having that, maybe you're going to have less rice or less potatoes or less other carbs. So just being mindful of that. And then, yeah, again, high fiber foods always help. So again, incorporating your whole grain stuff, your legumes, your beans. And a couple of other things to note. Bread is fine. You can eat bread. Again, if it fits your macros, then let's go for it. And that's one thing I haven't mentioned here, is that when it comes to your creating your calorie deficit, you do actually need to track. Okay, so you can opt for regular bread, be it white or brown, or even go for a protein bagel. Having smaller portions on the go. So another thing that might be quite good, for example, you go to the office and you've got work, maybe you keep like, what I would probably suggest actually is do this is you buy a meal deal, you eat half the sandwich and you have a protein shake with it. And I know that sounds bizarre, but I just think that's like such a good hack. Some of the sandwiches, yeah, they taste wonderful, but you are literally looking at a meal deal, which is going to maybe set you back a mass amount of calories. You might not even have a lot of protein in there. And so again, if you're trying to hit your protein target, you are going to be spending less calories on the protein, and more calories towards the carbs and the fats. So again, pairing it with a protein shake is really helpful. Another one that I love doing is actually opting for larger meals with less or no snacking. So again, this is my personal preference, but I think you should give it a go. You know, just try it a couple of days and see how you go with some larger meals. You could even have a bit of fasting if you're a fan of intermittent fasting, and perhaps maybe you do that already. Maybe don't do the snacking, maybe go and opt for a larger meal that can help make you feel more satisfied with your meals. Just give that a go. Other than that, pre-plan your days in advance. So track what you are going to have before you have it. And it just takes the decision fatigue out. It just takes the anxiety out of what you're doing. And it's not to say that you've got to have a really structured and rigid meal plan, but if you decide on what you're going to have for the next 3 to 4 days and just repeat it and then switch it out, and after 3 to 4 days, so you're going to allow yourself variety in a couple of days, but it just takes the thinking out of eating. And half the time, if you just wait for hunger and, you know, you're waiting on a meal and you're like, what have I got in the fridge? Not really sure, then, you know, you're going to start making poor choices. I'm going to actually open up the floor to the girls and we're going to have a bit of a discussion. So does anyone want to unmute and add some bits?
So I do that thing of I plan my meals. So I track on MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal is my meals and food for tomorrow is already in there.
Brilliant. Love that.
So I don't have to think about it. I can just look at it and go, oh yeah, I'm having that.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. And again, for you, like working and having quite a highly stressful job actually, and a very busy job, that just takes out the thinking for you, right?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Just this is what I'm having. Doesn't matter what order I have it in, but that's what I'm consuming. And then if I need more or less or to change stuff up, then I can manipulate it to fit that.
Brilliant. Exactly.
Yeah.
Amazing. Anyone else? Any other things that you might take home from this or might add or suggest?
So yeah, obviously, the low calorie food swaps are great, but also sometimes allowing yourself to have that one thing that you're craving, but if you track it and work around it, it works out better. So then you don't go the whole day thinking about it and feeling really unsatisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I've learned actually through tracking a little bit closer, because some things like you can have a little bit of chocolate and satiate yourself without eating the whole bar, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And now
Yeah.
you don't have that worry or that, like, oh, not worry, but you know,
Guilt.
that craving anymore.
Yeah.
Or the guilt, because you know you've had it,
have it.
it's only a little bit, and you can move on.
Yeah, I love that. And there's no harm in that. At the end of the day, that's one of the beauties for opting for tracking. And actually with tracking, you're actually going to get faster results because we can scrutinize things a bit more. Again, you have to be mentally ready for it. And if it's something where you feel like you don't want to track and we go for more like portion control, and looking at swaps and stuff, then that's also cool as well. But again, it just depends on where you are on your journey. And both the ladies that have shared a little insight into what they do, it works for them, and that's brilliant. And I love the fact that you mentioned that you include the chocolate, because I am all for that, definitely. And that's really, I think it's really important, and it's good to know, especially when it's that time of the month, when you do have cravings and things, like not to like ignore them, like have the chocolate, have the salty foods, whatever it is that you want. But yeah, the purpose of this one was just to try and give you some more ideas and some options. It's not to say that this is like the right way. But yeah. Is there anything else, girls, that you feel like you want to know a little bit more about? So maybe some of the stuff that I mentioned, do you feel like you are pretty clued up with meal swap ideas?
I must just share my latest game changer.
Yeah.
The Hartley's jelly pots.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They are completely vegan, and they are 10 calories a pot.
Wow. I've
They're
never actually had
amazing.
those.
They are so good.
Anyone who's tried Slimming World in the past, i.e. me, knows
Yeah.
about the Hartley's.
Yeah.
They're
wow.
so good.
I've never had them.
Really? Yeah, and they're all
Never had
vegan now.
them. I really didn't know that. Were they never vegan before?
Well, because obviously a lot of gelatin-based stuff used to be
Yeah.
pork gelatin. It's usually pork
Yeah.
gelatin. So you have to be careful which ones you get. Some do still use like pork or bovine gelatin. But most of the time now, they are vegan. So
Brilliant.
the taller pot that says 10 calories on the front, they're the ones that I get, and they're completely vegan.
Okay, there you go. They've got some jelly pots. So the cubes aren't, but the pots, they make them plant-based now. That's really good to know.
Yeah, they've got the vegan stamp on them.
Awesome. Any other?
Absolute game changer.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking into those myself.
And they
Any
do so
chef?
many flavors as well.
Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. Nishat, any from you?
Maybe not. I think I did try putting Greek yogurt in my tuna instead of mayo the other day. It's actually nice. I've been doing it since I tried it. More protein
Yeah.
Oh,
and
nice.
less calories. It doesn't taste too bad. See, with me, I get used. It's kind of bad to say, but sometimes I don't care about the taste of food. But then other times I do get cravings, so I don't know. I could be eating some really weird combinations of things sometimes.
I
Okay.
recently tried the vegan tuna.
How was that for
Oh,
you?
how was that?
So if you go by texture, awful, because it's nothing like tuna. But the taste is really good.
Wow.
I had it as like part of like a tuna salad in like a pita bread and stuff, and it was actually really good. I'll show you which one.
What's
If
the protein like on it?
If you type it in, and I'll see if I can. The one that I had was on the page. That one, that future tuna.
Okay.
It wasn't too bad. It wasn't like as high as some stuff, but it was pretty good. It's essentially like, I think they're just like soya. It's like the soya mince type stuff.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
can't
well, that's
remember.
pretty good to know. Funny thing for me though, Mella, is that growing up, I went off tuna.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I wasn't a vegan,
Yeah, there you go. 15 grams.
per 100 grams, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll give it a go. I think wow, yeah, plant protein blend. So it's okay. Interesting.
I was pleasantly surprised, but I think, like I say, when you have it like in like a pita bread and things, it just tasted like tuna salad.
I think I might do a tuna sweet corn pasta bake with cheese or something. And I think that's the one that would be the only way I'd eat tuna when I was a child. Yeah, so let's see if it still works. Right, brilliant. Ladies, anything else to add? Okay.
I think so.
Perfect. Well, anyway, we will probably very likely continue our chat after we've finished the podcast. But for those of you that have been listening, maybe you've just stumbled across the podcast today, or maybe you've been listening for a while and you've got a couple of questions that you'd like answered, you can send me a DM on Instagram, and that's @RichuBra, and we will see you here next time.